Mhm.
Executive coaching is something that has traditionally been done, kind of person to person. It's very high touch. As a result, it usually only happens at the executive level. There's a very small number of people that organizations are willing to support. There's all these kind of low value added activities that even though I like our expense reporting system, it's actually a lot better than anything else that I've used in the past. There's still opportunities for improvement. Net, they were able to get to a point where they think they can get a 70% improvement in their product team execution. That's pretty significant.
There's a growing expense eating into your company's profits. It's your cloud computing bill. You may have gotten a deal to start, but now the spend is sky high and increasing every year. What if you could cut your cloud bill in half and improve performance at the same time? Well, if you act by May 31st, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure can help you do just that. OCI is the next generation cloud designed for every workload, where you can run any application, including any AI projects, faster and more securely for less. In fact, Oracle has a special promotion where you can cut your cloud bill in half when you switch to OCI. The savings are real. On average, OCI costs 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Join Skydance Animation and today's innovative AI tech companies who upgraded to OCI and save. Offer only for new U.S. customers with a minimum financial commitment. See if you qualify for half off at oracle.com/eye on AI. That's oracle.com/eye on AI, EYEONAI, all run together. Oracle.com/eye on AI. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Jeffrey.
Okay. Thanks, Craig. So I'm Jeffrey Hammond, and I am a global ISV product strategist at AWS. I work primarily with software company customers, and I've had a long career in the software development space. I started out as a developer for a number of years, and then spent more than a decade building software development products, primarily in product management, product marketing roles, from small startups to large, high growth, and then acquisition. In my case, by IBM. After that, spent a number of different years working with a lot of different software companies as they built their products and worked through multiple technology disruptions. Mobile technology is an example, cloud technology, and now here we are again with disruption in the AI space. And so that's really what I do as a product strategist. I work with our software company customers to help them understand the opportunities that they have, and then how Amazon can help them take advantage of those opportunities and accelerate the way that they seize them to drive profitable growth.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you work with software vendors, not with people who are integrating the AWS or building on AWS.
Yeah. Amazon has five different segments that we organize customers by. There's enterprise, makes sense, small medium
Yeah.
business, startup, digital native businesses, and then the fifth one is ISV. And the reason that we do that is because, as you're probably well aware, ISV software companies have particular challenges when it comes to building products. They live and die by the success of the software that they build. And because they are serving their own customers, those customers often have specific requirements on them that create demands on the products that they build. So with respect to AI, you're not just building a service that you're deploying internally inside the firewall to your own employees or maybe to consumers. You're building products that you might have to deploy to thousands of businesses that all have their own unique demands with respect to what they want to do with those AI capabilities. And so you've got to be able to prepare for that and when you design your products.
Yeah, and these are independent software vendors that are building products on AWS or with AWS using
Right.
Bedrock or SageMaker or whatever the
That's right.
Yeah,
Or even considering it. They may not be building on AWS yet, but they think that there's an advantage that they can get by doing that.
yeah. You did a survey with Forrester Research uh, about how successful ISVs are in working with generative AI. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, happy to. One of the things that we do when we're thinking about strategy and serving our customers here is we like to dive deep, and data is one of the ways that you can dive deep into understanding what's going on in an industry segment. And so we commissioned this survey in the fourth quarter of 2024, and we went out and Forrester designed the survey, ran it, got over 650 responses around the world, spread across three different regions: North America, EMEA, and APAC. So it gives us a good perspective on what's happening around the world, not just here in North America. And what we asked the Forrester researchers to do was to ask about implementation challenges, plans, future goals, what these software companies were trying to accomplish. It gives us insight into how we should help them, but we also wanted to make sure that that data was more broadly available because it helps inform decision making with our customers as well. So it was a lot of fun to take a look at the details. I'm often say with surveys, the data is the data, and it's interpreting the data that is what I like to do, and then help our customers work through that.
Yeah, and there's been this rush to implement generative AI. A lot of experimentation, a lot of pilot programs, uh, but a lot of people have ended up with premature solutions and unproven business models, high development costs. So they need to prioritize value-driven use cases
Right.
to succeed. Can you talk about that? About how they do that prioritization?
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, I think it's important to understand that sort of rush to build isn't necessarily unique to generative AI. I've seen it in lots of other major technology disruptions. I think about when the iPhone came out in 2008, we had lots and lots of organizations building apps as quickly as they could without a clear understanding of how they were going to drive value.
Mhm.
And then they kind of learned what worked and what didn't. And so I think that we're working through that process. It's one of the reasons that I think it is so important with respect to generative opportunities to work backwards from the customer, and that's just something that's like second nature at AWS. There's a quote from Jeff Bezos in our 2016 shareholder letter that talks about the fact that customers are always beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied, even when they are report being happy and their business is great. And so, if you go out and talk to a customer and you ask them a question like, where do you have to do things today in this product, and it's still a pain wherever you want to call about it. And I'll use expense reporting as an example.
Yeah.
I've been doing expense reports for over 30 years. And I think about how I used to do expense reports when I had to tape receipts to pieces of paper, and then I had to scan those pieces of paper, and then I had to mail them in. That was a high toil process. But even today, there's still a lot of toil involved in how I do expense reports. Anything that's over $50, I've got to have a receipt for. And sometimes that means I've got to go search my email for the receipt that was sent to me by the hotel. And so there's all these kind of low value added activities that even though I like our expense reporting system, it's actually a lot better than anything else that I've used in the past. There's still opportunities for improvement.
Yeah.
And that's really the starting point of being successful in driving business value in AI, is working backwards from the things that customers want. So toil reduction is one of those. There's lots of good examples of very successful use cases in that world. Accounting is a really good example of a business where there is high toil, and there's also a shortage of labor.
Yeah.
If you look at the research, there are just not enough accountants to fulfill the demand, and so you're seeing practically every accounting software company that we work with making large investments in generative AI to reduce the toilsome activities and give accountants more leverage. Healthcare is another example of that. I was talking with a company last week that's a customer of ours, and one of the things that they said is whenever a lab runs a blood test, there's a whole
Mhm.
bunch of figures that come back. And yeah, a doctor or a clinician can take a look at those and spend, 7 or 8 minutes kind of looking through the lab and trying to extract that information. But what if we can automatically extract the most important information, give them the summary at the top, and reduce the amount of time that they spend scanning through that report from 8 minutes to 3 or 2? And what happens if we can do that dozens of times a day? It's a small example of toil reduction that adds up in the long run. So very useful use case. Retail. I worked with a company a couple months ago where they had a case where third party selling is a really big deal in retail now. You think of all the third parties that sell on Amazon, and one of the things you have to do to enable that is you have to map products from one catalog to another, and that can be a really, really tedious process if you've got 1,000 products to map. So one of the things that they said was, well, if we could get to 90% accuracy with a generative process, we could automate this. And so taking that identification of toil and then starting to work backward from that was one of the things that they did. There are other examples, content generation, that's what we all know of.
Mhm.
Executable artifact generation. To me, the perfect example of that, code is what we all think of. Code is an
Yep.
executable artifact that computers can run. But there's so many other things, like a calendar appointment, the ability to automatically create that, send it out, and synchronize it.
Mhm.
A data pipeline. SnapLogic is a really good example of a company that has a strong meta model underneath its product. And so you can either understand those pipelines that exist and summarize them so that they can be explained, or you can create them. And there are just dozens of areas in the software space where there are these executable artifacts that are ready for a higher level of abstraction. So these recurring use cases, and there are different types of them, are the basis for creating a product strategy. But it starts with understanding what's giving the customer heartburn.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you were talking about, the time savings for, doctors reviewing, medical tests. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of enterprises about, if you use generative AI to focus on, time saving, on productivity, it doesn't across a large organization, it certainly great for the user, for the person in in an accounting function or
Mhm.
something that can use Gen AI to summarize, and it saves them a few minutes. But those incremental time savings don't necessarily flow to the bottom line. If I'm an employee, I've saved 5 minutes. I'm going to check my personal email, or I'm going to do something else. And there's something in the notes here that were sent over by your team, where you talk about finding real value driven use cases uh, that are innovative, not
Mhm.
simply time saving. Can you talk about how you do that, how you identify those deeper value uh, situations?
Yeah, yeah. I think one way to do that is to start by asking the question, where are there opportunities to serve customers or to do things that we have not been able to profitably do before? And I'll give you a good example.
And just for listeners, when you say customers, you're talking about AWS customers. You're not
No, I'm
talking.
talking about the ISVs customers. So again,
Oh, okay,
I'm
sure,
always working backward from the
right,
ISV and thinking about their customers, because if they
right.
can serve their customers well, they're going to drive profitable growth. Um, so here's a good example. Executive coaching.
Hmm.
Executive coaching is something that has traditionally been done, kind of person to person. It's very high touch. As a result, it usually only happens at the executive level. There's a very small number of people that organizations are willing to support with that model. Well, what if we could open up, that sort of career development capability to a much broader set of employees in the organization, because we could do it at a much lower cost? That's an example of where an innovation, being able to take best practices, being able to take the identified competencies that an organization values and expose them through a generative approach, maybe an agentic approach, could really unlock opportunity that to this point in time is just underserved. If you look at what's happening right now in marketing around hyper personalization or clienteling, the reality is clienteling was only really done with your top tier customers, because it was too expensive to do it for your more casual customers. Well, if we can change that equation, then you can use it to drive additional value and expand the market. So that's where some of the big ideas lie. And I'm not saying you do those just instead of the little things, because the little things can add up. I think
Yeah,
code generation is a great example. I shared the stage at reInvent this year with um, the group vice president from New Relic, Suraj Krishnan, and one of the things he talked about was that they've been able to drive a 15% increase in developer productivity by deploying, essentially code copilot capability. When you're talking about a couple hundred developers, 15% is nothing to sneeze at from a
yeah,
from an expense perspective. So you've got to do both.
yeah. You also want to be careful that you're doing implementing these AI strategies in a careful way so that you don't lose trust of your customer. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Um, this is actually, I think, one of the takeaways that was a little bit surprising from the survey. That you know, I thought that we would see a little bit higher priority placed on customer trust and on data
Mhm.
security and privacy in the survey results, and I think that was a little bit of a miss from some of the ISVs, because we do see that as important. It's one of the reasons when we built Bedrock by design, the way that Bedrock is deployed, uh, it's designed so that the data stays private, that it never leaves, the private, environment that the customer set up, because that's a huge concern from our
Yeah,
customers. And again, I don't think it's necessarily unique to generative AI. I remember 10 or 15 years ago when we first had the opportunity to put source code up on the cloud with something like GitHub, and there were a lot of organizations that were like, "Well, I don't want to put my code up on the cloud. What if I lose control over it? That's my core IP." And then over time, we learned to trust it. We learned that it was that it could be implemented in a private way, that my code wouldn't get exposed, and that trust level got to the point where essentially storing source code in the cloud is just the major way that most companies do it now. We have to get to that same level of comfort with the data that customers are using, because one of the things that we see over and over again is one of the best ways to improve the accuracy of these generative use cases is to include data through retrieval augmented generation or cache
yeah,
augmented generation, and so making sure that that data is safe, critically important. So yeah, I think there's probably some more work to be done there.
yeah. And is the issue that ISVs adopt AI solutions in their software stack and overlook privacy issues or security issues, or is it that they're not communicating them adequately to their customers so that customers trust the this new AI uh, powered solution?
Yeah, I think it's part of the learning experience. What I'm seeing is like when we work with a customer and we go through a POC, so much of the focus is on just seeing if we can get to the right economies of scale. Where the costs are low enough, the accuracy is high enough, the performance is fast enough, and then they start to worry about the additional abilities. Or sometimes what they'll do is they'll put this out as a tech preview, and then the enterprise customers start to ask these questions, and then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, we better make sure that this is that we've got these capabilities as well. So I think it's mainly that it's a priority that we need to be more proactive about, so we design it in from the start.
Yeah, and AWS, when you're working with a software vendor, um, are you advising them of this, or you're recognizing through the survey that these are things that they need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, when we work with a software vendor, we definitely call this out, and it's part of the value that getting some of our subject matter experts involved in the customer when they're building provides. So, as an example, if we're doing an engagement with a software company in our Generative AI Innovation Center, it's
Mhm.
just part of the discussion of working through the process of the use case and then building it out.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Comes in threes usually. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and I should also say it's one of those things that we build into the product strategy as well. The idea of secure by design. So, a great example of that is beyond the design of Bedrock itself and how it treats customer data and information is the capabilities that we layer on top of it. Something like Bedrock Guardrails, as an example, specifically designed to reduce the instance of hallucinations, to reduce the possibility of objectionable content sneaking through. Some of the work that our partners do to be able to potentially identify issues like data loss that might be flowing through the prompts that are coming in to an LLM. So yeah, that's where the value of using a cloud platform and helping to accelerate the release can pay big dividends. Because otherwise, you got to solve the problem yourself if you're doing it all on prem.
right. Can you talk then about how do you work with an ISV? I mean, all these guys are, unless they're Gen AI native, they're trying to figure out, uh, how to use generative AI in their products.
Right.
These presumably are people that have already built products on AWS platforms. Uh, do they come to you? Do you reach out to them? If they come to you, is there a process that you go through with them? A checklist, or yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it starts at the account team level. I just came back from a week and a half in Australia and New Zealand, meeting with customers, and I was talking to some of our account teams out there. And one of the things they mentioned to me was that every single AM that's responsible for working with ISVs is currently going through the certification process to be an AI practitioner. So it's the same external certification that our customers get. So they're the ones that have those discussions when the customer has questions. Then they bring in the subject matter experts that are aligned with the particular services. They also then will identify opportunities to help accelerate those. And so I already mentioned the Generative AI Innovation Center. That's one way that we would take an opportunity and and define it and then move to a proof of concept. There are other things that we do. There's a program that I actually co-run. It's called the Roadmap Acceleration Program, and we do workshops with an ISV where we'll say, let's take a particular use case that you think is high value, and we'll go through the 5 questions that we use internally at Amazon, which are part of our working backward process. From those 5 questions, we'll go ahead and draft a PR FAQ, press release, frequently asked questions document. This is the way that we build our products. As part of that, then we also have reinforced that standard working backward process with some specific questions around building generative AI functionality. Like, as an example, why is generative AI the best way to meet this customer's need? Because it isn't all the time. And I think that that's one of the things that the Forrester survey kind of showed, that there was a little bit of hype here. And it's like, I need Gen AI. It's my solution. Let's go find the problem. What you really want to do is say, what's the problem? What's the toil? What's the dark data? What's the content? What's the area that we've never served before? And then, is Gen AI the right solution? And what specifically in Gen AI? Is it generating content? Is it automating tasks? Is it being able to use natural language so that a larger user set can use the product? And then, that question about data is critically important, because one of the things that we see from a pricing perspective, if you want to drive business value as a software company, if you've got unique data that is hard to acquire, if you've got control of the customer through a user interface or a hero product, if you are making a creative user or a user that's in short supply customer, if you're making them more effective, you're giving them leverage, those things are more valuable and allow you to look at user-based pricing models instead of consumption-based models. They let you look at potentially outcome-based models. They let you charge a higher price premium. So a great example of that, one of my favorite software companies out there is Canva. If you look at their hero product, there are just dozens of little places inside their product where they've implemented generative capabilities, which collectively speeds the whole user experience for the creative. And the net result of that is that they've been able to steadily increase what they charge for their product, because the value that it provides is apparent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the pricing models. That's something I've seen are also changing. I know in customer service, the old model is you charged by head count,
Mm,
and with the integration of generative chatbots and seamless handoff and all that stuff, these companies are starting to charge by outcome. Uh,
100%.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
wonderful for the for their customers,
Yeah.
rather than paying a fixed headcount cost. Can you talk about these, as these companies are shifting to hopefully sustainable growth and uh, profitable, sustainable growth? Are there steps that they should? Is there a checklist that you go down? And also, before we get to that, you mentioned a certification. What certification was that you were talking about?
It's the AWS Certified AI Professional.
I see. Is that for ISVs or is that for or
It's general. It's for anybody. It's similar to what we have as our certified cloud practitioner, which, basically every Amazon employee, when I joined a number of years ago, that was customer facing, was required to get. But it's the same thing that our customers, take as well from a training perspective.
and this training is required, or it's just a service that Amazon offers customers?
No, it's a service that we offer our customers to help them get up to speed to develop their own skills. But it's kind of like physician heal thyself. The best way to be
Yeah.
able to advise customers is to make sure that all of our folks have that same level of expertise. And that's actually something that I've actually found really, really, um, invigorating here at
Mhm.
Amazon that the expectation that the sellers are going to have the same level of skill and competency that we would normally expect out of software architects or technical sales support is one of the ways that we help identify those opportunities so that we can progress them.
Yeah. You mentioned the Generative AI Innovation Center. Can you explain a little more what that is?
Yeah, that is a set of investments that we made at a corporate level to put together a set of specialists that are designed to accelerate the big ideas that our customers have. So it's not unique to ISV, but we have a number of ISVs that have taken full advantage of that. I'll give you one example: Deputy, which is an up and coming ISV out of Australia that our team has worked with extensively. In their case, the use case that they wanted to focus on was what I would call an optimization use case. They wanted to get more effective in how they built their own products, which are for small businesses, workforce
Mhm.
management, that sort of thing. And so, the Gen AI Innovation Center worked with them to really push hard on toil reduction for their development teams and their product teams. So code generation, but also collaboration within the product teams, how they prototype, and net net, they were able to get to a point where they think they can get a 70% improvement in their product team execution. That's pretty significant. From an external perspective, BMC is a company that worked with the Gen AI Innovation Center specifically around the price and performance of the models that they were working with and the use cases that they had developed, because they wanted to get to this point where the cost of goods, the COGS for delivering this inference was low enough that they could make money off of it. And so in that case, the engagement with the innovation center was really focused on performance and cost reduction. And in that case, I think they reduced the costs on an order of 40% or more, I think.
Wow.
So yeah, so those are just examples of the types of engagements that happen at that level. Um, in my case, with the work that I do with our individual AI ISVs, there's a kind of a stepwise process that we go through. Um, we start with this idea of the the high priority use case. In some cases, it's an internal use case. They want to increase and improve their sales effectiveness. I did one where churn reduction, identifying churn reduction early on in the renewal process was critically important because the customer had a churn issue with their existing product. And so we worked on that. In other cases, it's product embedded. So we want to focus on one of these toil reduction use cases. Um, I think of a case around environmental health and safety. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of opportunity there through processing video, as an example, where you can identify safety risks, or where you can look at the result of an inspection and start to look at failure trends and identify, what might need to be done to reduce the number of failed inspections around a particular class of asset. So you can start with that use case and then start to build out what has to be done to make that use case successful. And I think I've a couple times I've mentioned the idea of accuracy and performance and cost. Those are kind of like the modern iron triangle for generative AI, because you have to start with that accuracy thing. How
Right.
accurate do we need to be for this use case to be successful? That's kind of whatever level that is kind of like non-negotiable. And once you've got that accuracy goal, then you can say, okay, well, how fast does it need to be? And how much are we willing to pay to hit the performance and accuracy targets that we need to hit? What you may find at that state is you simply can't do it cost effectively today because the inference is too expensive, or the models take too long because we have to use a reasoning model to get to the level of accuracy that we want. And if that's what happens, then you put it aside and say, okay, we can't do this today. But, in the last 2.5 years, we've already seen the inference costs come down something like on the order of
Yeah.
90%. So while we can't do it today, maybe we can do it 12 months from now, so we can revisit at that point. But if you pass that accuracy, performance, cost triangle, then you can move on to the next step. And, in that product mapping example I used earlier, they set a goal of 90% accuracy And it took them 3 different tries with different models and different approaches to using that model to hit that accuracy target. But once they did, then they could see what their cost was and say, can we make this work in our product? And if you're embedding it into your hero product, which they were, we said, well, the cost is relatively minor because this only happens every so often. And so we'll just put it in the cost of what we do, and it'll be an additional differentiation, and we'll push it to production. Um, you do have to ask that pricing power question. That's really step 4, and figure out the right pricing model. And they're probably the best work that I've seen on figuring out the right pricing model is what BCG has done. Guys by the name of John Pineda and Jacob Konikoff. Uh, what they have observed is that if you ask questions like, what's the unique data that we bring to the use case, and how defensible is that? Um, if we can expose that value in our existing hero products instead of creating new separate standalone products like co-pilots or that sort of thing, which we then go out and have to sell as new products or additional products. If you can create use cases that create um, customer leverage as opposed to cost reduction, you can generally charge a higher price, a more
Yeah.
premium price. So when I work with our software company customers, I'm always asking these questions because that helps us get to the point where we say, yeah, we can do this and we can use it to drive profitable growth. So it's not rocket science, but it works.
Yeah, all of this, the Generative AI Innovation Center, is that available to all customers or even prospective customers, or do you have to have a certain level of billing at AWS before
Yeah,
it's available
yeah.
to you?
You do need to work through an account manager to start
Mm,
that process, and they'll work with the request. And obviously there's finite capacity, so we prioritize requests based on the opportunity. If it's a huge big idea, the differentiation is apparent. The opportunity is massive. They're going to work with that software company.
yeah, yeah. What is, or maybe you covered it and just didn't name it? What's the roadmap acceleration program?
Yeah, that is an ISV unique program that we run. And there, the only requirement is that the product decision maker, CPO, VP of product, is willing to spend the time to go through the use cases with us. So very low bar of entry. We start with that 2 to 3 hour intake process, and then we go through the PR fact writing process. We involve them in that. That usually is something that's a combination of email and meetings, so maybe another hour or two, and then from there we go into a couple day POC process. So as an example, in Australia, we use the Melbourne Builders Lab, which is, we also have one of those in New York. We bring their developers together with our prototyping teams, and we use that PR fact to start to drive the idea, and we see how far we can get. We test the validity. So that's an example of a program that's kind of in between something like the Gen AI Innovation Center and something that's more tailored around an individual customer, like an immersion day that the Bedrock team would come in and spend time, or a subject matter expert. So we really try to meet the customer where they want to meet us.
Yeah, ISVs, when talking about deploying generative AI infrastructure over the next 4 to 12 months, right? I shouldn't say ISVs, maybe it's all respondents to the Forrester survey, that 46% mentioned leveraging cloud-based Gen AI platforms, and only 30% expressed interest in building infrastructure, Gen AI infrastructure. That is uh, inference. That's basically inference, right? You're talking about uh, leveraging API inference.
Well, there's also training as well. So first of all, that stat is all software. It's software company only. The survey that the Forrester folks did only looked at companies that said our business model is building software products for businesses. So
Right.
so ISVs. Um, so we have a lot of software company customers that choose to train their own models on services like SageMaker. Inference is obviously where they make the money after they've done that. So that's probably the primary focus. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the desire to keep up. I mean, I think of what was it, second or third week of January, where in the course of a couple days we had DeepSeek, and then we had Quen, and the entire financial market evaporated for a couple days, and then by the end of that week we had DeepSeek support inside Bedrock, and the other cloud vendors had very rapid uptake too. That matters because this idea of I've got a model and now I'm done and I can move forward with it. That's not reality. You see the software companies already that are pushing hard on Claude 3.7 as an example, and we're talking about end of lifing. I think Claude 3.0, and it's only what, a year old. That level of speed is just is hard, especially when it can take a little while when you're a software company to validate a new model and assess how well it's going to work for you. And so with the rate of speed of all these models coming out, model evaluation has become one of those factors that can really accelerate product strategy. So
Yeah.
things like prompt evaluation, or prompt optimization, the ability to use FMEval and SageMaker to very, very quickly test new models, is one of those things that ISVs value highly, because a couple percentage point reduction in your COGS or a couple percentage points improvement in your accuracy could be the difference between we can't make this use case work now, and now we've crossed the barrier, so let's go ahead and implement it because we know we can do it profitably.
Yeah. Yeah, and, when I was saying only 30% expressed interest in building Gen AI infrastructure, I assumed that meant taking an open source model and training it. What does that mean?
No, I think that means on their own premises, in their own environments, in their own data
Yeah,
centers.
right, I see. Yeah, yeah. But in terms of, fine-tuning existing models, I mean, you mentioned DeepSeek's available on Bedrock now, right?
Yep.
If someone wants to use DeepSeek, and they want to uh, fine tune it, do they do all of that on Bedrock? And do you guys offer support for that?
Yeah, on the models that we do support fine tuning for some models. I'm not sure if we actually support DeepSeek fine tuning or not. I'd have to look at
Sure.
that and give you the update on that. But yes, where we can, we support that capability. And actually, that's one of the things that software companies are often interested in doing, because they do have proprietary domains, proprietary data, domain-specific terminology, and that fine tuning can yield a few extra points of accuracy, and it's worth the additional cost to be able to support that. One of the issues with tuning is that you then have a model that is somewhat unique, and so you need to be able to support that. And so often that'll get tied to provision throughput in Bedrock to be able to execute that. So you've just got to make sure that accuracy, performance, price triangle is reflected when you're doing that evaluation.
Yeah. From where you sit, you can see enterprises and ISVs, in particular, in this case, adopting AI. As I said at the beginning, I know there's all kinds of experimentation and pilot programs, but there have not been, I mean, the diffusion through the product space. There are a lot of new products, but has not been as quick as one would expect. I mean, everybody now has a little chatbot on their product, but the products themselves haven't necessarily evolved. Do you Where do you see that process, do you think that things were changing and still are changing so fast that a lot of people started experimenting and then just backed off and said, well, let's wait and see how this settles out before I dive in again?
Um, I actually think it's a little bit of a different challenge, and I think there was some interesting data in the Forrester survey when we looked at some of the issues around data challenges, because as we see, data is one of those things that really dramatically improves accuracy. I think some of these early experiments exposed some of the challenges in their existing infrastructure. So, for example, among the respondents that had implemented at least one generative AI use case or product, um, siloed data came back as a
Mhm.
real challenge to their efforts. Now, when you look at the data from those that had done more than that and were expanding the use cases that they were building, so they gotten kind of they had or a little bit more aggressive. Silo data wasn't as big a challenge, but integrating with existing systems then became a challenge. And so I think part of the reason that you're seeing all this focus right now on agentic frameworks and agentic technology is because of that latter issue. So, you've got to solve these challenges before you can take the next steps in unlocking the value of toil reduction. You don't get toil reduced without having tools that agents can use to actually act on the user's behalf. And so, that blocking and tackling has to be done to unlock that next level of value.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's being done. I mean,
Sure.
yeah, there's, I mean, the AWS is, where are you guys in agents and agentic workflows?
Yeah, so we've got Bedrock Agents, which has support for multi-agentic communication. Boy, it's hard to believe that MCP,
I
Model
was
Context
just gonna
Protocol,
say,
has only been around since November.
it's
It
funny,
hasn't
I
even
was
been 6 months, right?
yeah, yeah, and no one really, was paying attention to it until, January or so. I mean, it took a
Yeah.
little while for people to understand what it was, yeah.
Yeah, when I started paying attention to it, when I saw um, the the Graal team on the Java VM implementing an MCP server, and it's like, okay, so now we're opening this up to Java programs, and when you started to see MCP servers for databases, and it's like, okay, this is I know people describe it as USB-C for AI. My kind of early description was it's kind of like ODBC for generative AI, and getting access to the data and being able to use it is critical. And so, when I started to see, GitHub repositories that showed how Nova was integrating with MCP, it was like, okay, this is becoming what when I was an analyst we would have called a de facto standard. And I
Right,
think we're getting there very, very quickly. There's still more work to be done, and that's actually one of the concerns that I have. It feels like that there are so many agentic frameworks out there. There's
yeah,
a risk of what I would call islands of automation. So I've got an agent that's working in Agent Force, and I've got an agent that's working, that maybe is part of Boomi or HubSpot. How do I start to put these things together? It seems like as an industry, we have to do a little bit more work around making sure that these agents can work with each other regardless of where they might be deployed.
yeah, 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 that's fascinating, and I guess that's one of the challenges is which of those frameworks do you commit to, right?
Yeah, I think the big thing from our perspective is making the calculation that there's probably not going to be a single framework that an
Mhm.
enterprise is going to use. They will end up with multiples, and federation is probably an approach that benefits everyone. And
Yeah,
so, I think that's the strategy that makes a lot of sense going forward, because otherwise I don't see how you rein in the fragmentation that is already out there.
yeah, and and the link between the federated states would be MCP, or is
I think
something
there's
else?
I think there's a part of certainly a part that it plays. I think what Google's done with A2A, agent to agent, is pretty interesting as well. Um, Certainly some there's certainly a lot of opportunity for innovation here still.
Yeah. Yeah. So, have I is there anything that we haven't talked about that you're, doing that you'd like listeners to hear about?
uh no, it's amazing. We've done what time has gone by so fast. I want to be respectful of your time. I guess maybe what I would just say is this 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 disruption, I think, at least in my opinion, again, I've been doing this for more than 30 years, is potentially the biggest disruption to how humans work with computers
Mhm.
that I've seen. I mean, if I think about the last 50 years of history from the mainframe on, um, we've always had to expect the user to respond and adapt to the system,
Yeah.
because we throw up a form, or we give them a command line, and they've got to know what to poke the system with to get it to do something. And to me, the power of what's happening right now is the evolution of intentional interfaces, that I express what I want the system to do for me, with the expectation that the system is going to respond and adapt to me. And you already see some beginnings of the power of that, like one of the things that Druva reported when they started to implement code generation copilots, and we're automating documentation, is it reduced the onboarding time for new developers by 30%.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I was working with a company in the healthcare space that was talking about their own onboarding experience, and one of the things that they said was, instead of having to throw up a bunch of forms that the user has to fill out, we can ask the new customer, what do you want to accomplish? Do you want to run a marathon? Yeah, I want to run a marathon. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to keep my lipids under control. And then the system can react with personalized capabilities based on what the customer wants.
Yeah.
It makes me so excited for what we can do with this technology, especially as we continue to drive the cost down to make these sorts of use cases possible.
That's right. Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time. Okay, I'm gonna end it there. There's a growing expense eating into your company's profits. It's your cloud computing bill. You may have gotten a deal to start, but now the spend is sky high and increasing every year. What if you could cut your cloud bill in half and improve performance at the same time? Well, if you act by May 31st, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure can help you do just that. OCI is the next generation cloud designed for every workload, where you can run any application, including any AI projects, faster and more securely for less. In fact, Oracle has a special promotion where you can cut your cloud bill in half when you switch to OCI. The savings are real. On average, OCI costs 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Join Skydance Animation and today's innovative AI tech companies who upgraded to OCI and save. Offer only for new U.S. customers with a minimum financial commitment. See if you qualify for half off at oracle.com/IonAI. That's oracle.com/IonAI. EYEONAI, all run together. Oracle.com/IonAI.